Welcome back to the Inspired Wisdom Academy podcast. We love to do a deep dive here, and today we're tackling a topic that's pretty much on everyone's mind: happiness.
It really is universal, isn't it?
It is. We're going to take 11 reasons why you're unhappy, how to solve the unhappiness puzzle by Pattie Barnett, and really break it down.
Sounds good.
Now, this book is packed with insights, packed. So get ready.
I'm ready. What I find fascinating is that she really dives into all the different aspects of unhappiness. It's not just like a bad mood,
Right.
but it's really like a symptom of deeper issues.
Yeah. So let's unpack this a little. The book talks about 11 issues, specific issues that can lead to unhappiness. One that really stood out to me was the idea that we can't expect happiness as a right.
Yeah.
Just because we exist.
Right. Yeah. It's like expecting to run a marathon without putting in the training.
Yeah.
You got to put in the work. Barnett's point is that happiness is like anything else that's worthwhile. It requires effort. You have to be intentional about it.
Okay. So instead of just waiting for happiness to kind of poof, magically appear.
Right.
But we have to actually cultivate it. So that makes sense. But how?
Well, the book goes into that. One of the first steps is to really understand the role of expectations. Barnett argues that we're constantly comparing ourselves to these unrealistic standards, think like social media or, just media in general. The perfect relationships, the constant successes, and that just sets us up to feel like we're not good enough.
Yes, the comparison trap. I've totally fallen into that one.
We all have. But what can we do about it? Barnett says that we need to redefine our standards, embrace imperfection, and focus on our own progress, rather than measuring ourselves against other people.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
It does.
Celebrate our own wins.
Yeah.
No matter how small. Okay, I love that. It's like we're all running our own race in our own lane. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else is doing. But ultimately, our happiness depends on us, our own personal journeys.
Exactly. And on that note of things that influence our happiness, Barnett highlights another issue: the expectation that other people are going to be the source of our joy.
Oh, this is a big one. I think we've all been there, putting pressure on partners, friends, family to kind of make us happy. So what does Barnett say?
She says we need to find that happiness within.
Okay.
It's about cultivating self-reliance when it comes to our emotional well-being. It's not about isolating ourselves. It's about finding that joy in your own company, pursuing your own interests, and developing that inner peace that doesn't depend on anyone else.
Okay, so we build this strong foundation of happiness within, and then we connect with others from a healthier, more balanced place.
Exactly. It's like the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. We've got to fill our own cups first.
That's such a good analogy. Okay, another issue that Barnett talks about that really resonated with me is that so many of us expect life to be like a movie. Everything's going to fall perfectly into place.
The happily ever after myth. But here's the thing Barnett says that's not realistic, and it sets us up for disappointment. Real life is messy, it's unpredictable, and you know what? It's full of challenges.
And you know what? Even those happy movie endings, they kind of gloss over all the hard work and all the resilience that it really takes to overcome the obstacles and to build a really fulfilling life.
So true. Embrace the unscripted nature of our own stories.
I like that.
Find meaning in the challenges and recognize that growth often happens outside of our comfort zones.
And speaking of growth, if you're looking to cultivate more happiness, I highly recommend that you go to inspiredwisdomacademy.com.
Fantastic resource, for anyone who wants to kind of dive deeper into all these concepts. And you can start creating some real lasting change in your life.
Another major theme is connection. And Barnett really stresses that there is a difference between toxic relationships and supportive ones.
It's night and day.
It is.
She says that surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us and encourage us, who inspire us, can have a profound impact on our happiness.
So true. But then on the other side, you have these toxic relationships and they drain us, they zap our energy, and we're left feeling completely depleted.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be mindful of who we let influence our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors. It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
So true. So it's really about creating a support network that nourishes our well-being.
It is. And you know what? It's also about being honest with ourselves about which relationships are truly supportive and which ones might be holding us back.
So it's not about like cutting people out completely. It's about being intentional with who we choose to spend our time and energy with.
Exactly. And it's okay to set boundaries and prioritize our own well being, even within family relationships.
That makes sense. Family. Speaking of which, Barnett does tackle a very specific issue in the book, and that is struggling with difficult family relationships. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. So, what does she say about that?
Well, she encourages open communication, honest communication, even when it's challenging.
Ooh, that's hard.
It can be. It's about expressing our feelings in a respectful way and listening to understand the other person's perspective and being willing to compromise. And if things get really difficult, family therapy might be a really good option.
Oh, so it's all about finding ways to communicate more effectively, even when it's difficult, and seeking help when needed.
That's right. And you know what? This emphasis on communication isn't just for family relationships. Barnett argues that it's essential for all healthy relationships.
Communication is key. It builds trust, it helps us resolve conflicts, and it just deepens our connections. But I think a lot of us struggle with communication, especially when it comes to difficult conversations. It can be really hard.
It can. Barnett acknowledges that vulnerability is scary, but she encourages us to embrace it as a way to connect more deeply with others.
And so how do we do that?
She suggests practicing active listening,
Right.
expressing our needs clearly, and, being willing to compromise.
I love that. It's about finding that balance between being honest about our feelings and being respectful of the other person's perspective. It's not always easy, but it's so worth it to build those strong, healthy relationships.
You're absolutely right. We're exploring all those 11 reasons why you're unhappy. This next section is all about the power of our environment and how much it affects our well-being.
Okay, interesting. So we've been talking about relationships, but now we're talking about our physical space. Like, I know for me, I definitely feel better when my workspace is organized, clean, like I can focus more.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Barnett actually makes this connection between a cluttered room and a cluttered mind. She says our physical spaces can either give us energy or drain our energy.
Okay, so it's more than just how it looks. It's about how it makes us feel. Like, does it support our mental and emotional well-being? So what are some tips?
Well, she has some really simple ones like decluttering, let in some natural light, add some plants to your space. Okay, even small changes can make a difference to your mood and your energy levels.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to be doing some decluttering and rearranging after this.
But it's not just our physical space, huh? Right? What about our mental space?
Yes. And that's where the fear of trying new things comes in. It can keep us stuck in a rut.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all felt that, like staying in our comfort zone,
Yeah.
even when we know it's not really fulfilling.
It's like we're in this little bubble. But Barnett says we have to step outside of it, even in small ways at first. Maybe try a new hobby, take a different route to work, or just say yes to an opportunity, even though you'd normally say no.
I like that.
Challenge ourselves to grow.
Exactly. So, like embracing the unknown and seeing challenges as opportunities. And you know what? Speaking of growth, if you are looking for more support and guidance, check out inspiredwisdomacademy.com. It's a great resource for anyone who wants to unlock their full potential.
It is. Okay, back to happiness. One of the things I found really interesting in the book was how important Barnett thinks it is to have a purpose in life.
I agree. She even has a whole chapter about it. But how do we find it?
Right, that's the question. Barnett says that we should think about what makes us happy, like what activities make us lose track of time? What causes do we care about?
She thinks that purpose is where our passions and skills and values all meet.
Okay, so it's like finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, but it's not always a sudden realization. It takes exploration and experimentation.
And purpose doesn't have to be this huge thing, like some grand mission. It can be how we live our everyday lives.
It really can, through our work, our relationships, how we contribute to our community. And this all ties into habits, too.
Oh, habits. They are so important.
They really are, for better or worse.
Yes. So what does Barnett say about them?
Well, she says that habits are like the tiny building blocks of our lives. Even small changes, if you do them over and over, they make a big difference over time. She wants us to choose habits that are good for us, that match our goals and values and make them part of our routine.
So being intentional with our actions and being consistent. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. one step at a time.
Exactly. And she also has some great strategies for breaking bad habits. First, you have to be aware of your triggers. Like what makes you do the thing you don't want to do? Is it a certain situation, a certain emotion?
So understand the why behind our actions. And then once we know the triggers, then we can start to come up with strategies, to interrupt that pattern.
And replace it with something healthier.
Right?
And she reminds us that change is hard.
It is.
It takes time and effort. And there will be times when we slip up.
It happens.
But don't beat yourself up. Learn from it and get back on track.
It's about being kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
Recognizing that growth is a process. It's not just a destination.
And speaking of kindness, Barnett stresses how important self-care is for happiness. But she has a different way of looking at self-care. It's not just about bubble baths and spa days.
I'm really curious to hear this. Like, what does she mean?
It's more about meeting our needs, all of them, physically, emotionally, and mentally. It's about making our well-being a priority.
Okay. So not just pampering ourselves, but actually taking care of ourselves.
Exactly. Like getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, exercising regularly.
So those are important.
They are. Spending time in nature.
Yes.
Connecting with people you love and doing things that make you happy.
It's all about tuning into our needs and then making choices that are good for us.
It is. And when we take care of ourselves, we're actually better able to care for others too.
Absolutely. It all comes back around.
Yeah.
So this leads us to another concept that Barnett explores, and that is embracing change, which can be hard.
Change can be really uncomfortable.
Even when good for us.
Right. So Barnett says we need to acknowledge our fears, but don't let them control us.
I like that.
Because real growth happens when we step outside of our comfort zones.
It's almost like that discomfort is a sign that we're on the right path. But how do we actually do it?
It's easier said than done.
It is.
Barnett says start small, take little risks at first, and slowly expand your comfort zone over time.
I love that. So building our confidence one step at a time. And that reminds me of another thing Barnett talks about. Dwelling on the past.
Ugh, yes, it's easy to get stuck there.
It is. And all the what ifs and the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. So how do we stop doing that?
Barnett suggests practicing mindfulness and using grounding techniques to bring yourself back to the present moment. Because we can't change the past, but we can choose how we think about it and how we move forward.
And it's all about learning from our past and then creating a better future.
It is. So this brings us to something that a lot of people have the wrong idea about.
I'm listening.
The relationship between money and happiness.
Ah, yes. Can money buy happiness?
Well, Barnett doesn't think so. She says that money can definitely make you comfortable. It gives you security and freedom, but it doesn't make you truly happy. She thinks chasing money often leaves people feeling empty, even when they have a lot of it. She has this great quote that really sums it up. True wealth goes beyond numbers in a bank account. It encompasses health, relationships, freedom, and purpose.
And it's a good reminder that happiness comes from within, not from achievements or possessions. It's about inner peace, meaningful connections, having a purpose. And speaking of purpose, if you're looking for more resources and guidance on your own journey, you should definitely check out inspiredwisdomacademy.com.
It really is a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to cultivate greater happiness and well-being.
And as we explore 11 reasons why you're unhappy, I'm really struck by how practical Barnett's advice is. It's not just some vague idea of happiness. It's like she gives us actual tools and strategies to use.
I agree. And I like how she kind of reframes unhappiness. Like instead of seeing it as a bad thing, something to avoid, she says we should see it as a sign, like a signal that something needs to change.
It's like a wake-up call.
It is.
A nudge to look at our beliefs, our habits, our choices, and make some changes so that we can be our best selves.
Exactly. And we've talked about a lot of those areas where we can make those changes, like challenging those unrealistic expectations and learning to rely on ourselves more. Nurturing those healthy relationships and creating spaces, environments that are actually good for us.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways is that happiness comes from within. It's not something we find out there in the world. It's something we have to cultivate inside ourselves.
It really is. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our responses, and in the end, we choose our own level of happiness.
That's pretty powerful.
It is.
And I love that quote from the book where she says, you don't pursue happiness, you create it.
That's a good one.
And another one that really stuck with me was happiness isn't a destination, it's a way of being. So it's about those daily choices that we make, the ones that support our well-being and get us closer to the life we want to be living.
So it's about taking all of those things, gratitude, self-care, growth mindset, purpose, and making them part of our everyday lives.
And if you need help with that, if you're looking for more support, check out inspiredwisdomacademy.com. There you go.
It's full of resources and courses and tools that can help you create a happier and healthier life.
So you have the power to choose happiness. It's not about reaching some far off goal. It's about enjoying the journey. And it's about making choices that are true to yourself.
And be kind to yourself along the way. Change takes time and we'll all have setbacks. But celebrate your successes, learn from the tough times, and never stop growing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of happiness. We hope you got some great insights and feel inspired to create a life that is truly fulfilling. Thanks for listening to the Inspired Wisdom Academy podcast. We'll see you next time for another deep dive